Splatoon 3, by the time this video goes up, should be right in front of us. It looks amazing, and frankly it looks like the best Splatoon game yet. But to kill the time, I thought, why don't I take an in-depth look at Splatoon 2? It is a game that means quite a bit to me, so I think it's a great idea to do one last send-off to the game that has given us so many memories. Now when I say in-depth, I mean in-depth. This is going to be a pretty lengthy video, so you don't have to sit through it all in one sitting. I will be splitting up the segments into single player, Salmon run, and then finally the multiplayer. I will try to look at every part of each mode and try to break them down, so join me in a goodbye to Splatoon 2. Now the single player mode for Splatoon 2 is the Octo Canyon. If you have ever played Splatoon 1 single player, it's the exact same thing. You go from level to level, all linear, and try to get to the end to save the mini Zapfishes. Oh yeah, the entire story is the great Zapfish is missing or something, but you'll come to find there's basically no story. As you go through the levels, they will get progressively harder, and honestly, do I even need to explain this? Octo Canyon is essentially a glorified tutorial. The levels are extraordinarily easy. Playing this mode is just mind-numbing. When you already have been playing Splatoon for a while, there's nothing stimulating in this mode. Hell, it's even pretty hard to die in this mode. The only times I died in the playthrough I did for this video was trying to go too fast and accidentally dying to the Octolings on some levels. Now, I didn't have any footage of the story mode, so I had to replay it again. This was basically a speedrun, and I flew through the stages as fast as I could. Now, the reason I dreaded coming back to this mode again is because I have already played through this mode 9 times already. Yep, someone at Nintendo thought it would be a very funny prank to lock 100% completion behind playing the mode with every weapon. One playthrough may already be a bit boring, so imagine doing it 8 more times. Not only do they lock 100% completion behind this, they also lock weapons behind this. Each class of weapons has a hero version of the base weapon, and so the only way to get these hero weapons is to use the weapon on every single stage in the game. Thankfully, these weapons are no different from the base weapons you can already get, but it is just a bit weird to lock these behind the story mode. The story mode was also the only way to use certain weapons for an amount of time, as some weapons in the story mode were not in multiplayer yet. Back to the story mode though, you will go through 5 worlds, all having a bit of the same format for the stages while still having new ideas. The main thing is that the second to last level will always be a battle against Octarians on the regular multiplayer stages. These I found were the most enjoyable stages. It is a great way to get new players adjusted to not only the maps, but also showing them how firefights will play out. Now this doesn't mean they aren't boring though. The Octarians are piss easy to kill and are very predictable. Like, these Octarians just throw themselves at you and just beg to be killed. Like, they barely put up a fight. Now I know this is very nitpicky, but I just wish that the story mode had more content and more challenge. I get that it's supposed to be a tutorial to help new players to adjust, but there's already a tutorial in the game. See, I don't get this. If you want new players to get accustomed, they can just play Turf War. There's already skill-based matchmaking, so why not just let them learn from trial by fire? There are at least great pieces of lore in the story mode, all lore that I am not educated on as much as I thought I was. You can find sunken sea scrolls that will give you a little bit of lore with a picture and some text. Now I am in no way qualified to talk about Splatoon lore, but from what I do know and from what I've learned from YouTube videos, it's very fascinating. The only thing is you have to get a degree in Splatoon lore to even start. For most people, the scrolls are cool little pieces of info that can show what may have happened, but you actually have to go further to know what's going on. The hero mode probably only takes maybe 2 to 3 hours to get through, but I wanted to quickly get footage and stop playing this mode, so I speedran it and beat it in an hour and a half. So all in all, the hero mode is a great mode if you are new to Splatoon. It does introduce many great mechanics and give the player a grip of the controls, but does that mean it's good?
No.
As a campaign, the hero mode is just a very basic, boring mode. And I am not alone with this. Many people voiced their opinions on how the story mode just didn't cut it. It was a copy-paste job of Splatoon 1's hero mode, and people just want something a bit meatier. So lo and behold, the following year, Splatoon's first paid DLC, The Octo Expansion. The Octo Expansion was something huge for Splatoon. A paid DLC that not only added Octolings, something people were asking for since Splatoon 1, but was also a step forward for Splatoon single player. Octo Expansion puts you in the shoes of an Octarian who wishes to go to Inkopolis, or at least that's what I think it's about. I know there's a story, but I didn't pay too much attention on my second time around, so sorry. But yes, there is an actual story in this mode. Now, there was technically a story in the other mode, but that was as much of a story as me drunkenly explaining my trip to the convenience store at 3 AM. It won't make much sense. Now, Octo Expansion has a full story that you can actually follow. More importantly, the Octo Expansion has much better levels. This time, levels will give you many options for weapons, or sometimes force you to only use a certain weapon, or even sometimes nothing at all. Because you are forced to only use certain weapons, the levels are specifically designed around the weapons you are forced to use. For example, some levels will force you to use a charger, so the level will be designed around this. So you may be put into an arena with a ton of cover and you have to outsnipe all the enemies, or you have to stay on a grind rail and have to pop every balloon to get through the stage. This right off the bat makes the stages way more intriguing. Having them designed around the weapons lets the stages shine brighter. The ideas in this mode show how much the original hero mode was held back by having to be playable with every weapon and having to be beginner friendly. Because it is paid DLC, it gives them the ability to make the mode actually challenging. This is because if someone is willing to pay DLC for a game, they must care at least a little bit about the game and have some experience. This allows the stages to be harder, and I mean a lot harder. I mean, compare this boss fight from Octo Expansion to the same boss fight from the base game. There's a lot more to keep track of, and you can't just stand around and dodge at the last minute like you could in every other boss in the main game. Many of the stages are still stuck in my head, like the level where you have to line up the 8 balls, or the one where you're thrown into a ton of enemies with a charger. Even if you're frustrated with a level, you can skip it, if you're a dirty cheater, or just back out and do a different level. There is no requirement to do every level in the game, and the weaving paths of the subway let you just select any level you want. If you don't like the stage, just back out and try another. The objective is to collect 4 thangs for this creepy ass telephone, and if you do, you will get to go to the promised land. While you work through the levels and find the thangs, you meet Pearl and Marina, who will help you just like how Marie helped you in Octo Canyon. The story is nothing to write home about, but it is much better than what we got before, and it even has cutscenes. The presentation is also just amazing. The 80s aesthetic really brings some well-needed personality and brings some great visuals. Every part of the presentation of Octo Expansion just oozes with character. It could also be themed like this because of how the Octarians are away from normal squid society, and so they are behind when it comes to fashion and trends, where the 80s theming is what's cool at the time for the Octarians. But you know, that's just the theory. A game! Now, I wanted to fully replay the expansion, so I actually loaded it up on a different Switch account so I could start fresh. This was just so I could fully re-experience the mode, and I'm glad I did. I also decided to 100% the mode for a second time, just for the hell of it. This really let me see how difficult some of these stages are. I remember one stage from my first playthrough that took me hours upon hours to beat. When I finally did beat it though, it felt euphoric. This is that one level where you have to protect the ink sac in the middle from attacking enemies. It was simple enough at the start. One enemy will jump and attack, then two in different spots, and then chaos will start. As time goes on, it becomes harder to balance the sides that you're getting attacked from, while still making sure nobody is attacking the ink sac. It also makes you have a ton of urgency to take them out as fast as you can, because if you don't, they'll start using specials. Overall, it is probably one of my favorite missions in the mode. The guiding 8-ball stages are also, most of the time, pretty fun. The music is one of my favorites from this expansion. The relaxing mood it brings while thinking of how to get the ball to the goal is very, very nice. Now, sometimes these stages can be a bit frustrating, but that's okay. It didn't bother me at all that my ball fell off the platform and got stuck on a rail. When I tried to get it back, I failed. Moving on, the special modified boss fights are some of my favorite stages from the DLC. Forcing you to fight bosses you are familiar with, but giving you weapons or conditions that make it more difficult, or even forcing you to approach the boss in a completely different way. Like the samurai guy boss fight, where you are forced to use the baller to fight him with no other weapons. Now that may sound easier until you realize his attacks will send you flying to your death. This forces you to observe his movements and attacks, as one hit can prove lethal. The fight against the Octo Shower is actually much easier with Inkjet because you are higher up and Inkjet one-shots the enemies. Meanwhile, the original fight is actual hell for anyone that doesn't want to use the charger because of how high up the enemies are. This makes it so that the charger is the only one that can actually reach them without using the extra things they add to the stage. This was the only stage in the Octo Canyon playthrough where I switched weapons because of how terrible it is to use any other weapon on this boss fight. But moving on, the last boss fight revamp I want to talk about from Octo Expansion is the Octo Oven Rematch. This fight doesn't have a huge gimmick like having to use a special for the fight. No, instead, they just put a shitload into the fight to make it challenging. Look at the two fights side by side. One, I barely move in and it's very boring. Now look at the other one. There's a ton going on and a ton to keep track of, and you are constantly moving and shooting to stay alive. One of the more meh kind of stages are the ranked kind of full push stages. These are the levels where you start at your base and you either have to push a tower or the Rainmaker to the other end of the stage. These are meant to be more of a difficult version of the multiplayer stage levels in Octo Canyon, but they do not pose that much of a challenge. Most of the time, it's very predictable where the Octolings will spawn, so you can just kill them before they do anything. The Rainmaker stages are a bit more difficult because you don't have an actual weapon, but it doesn't really make it that much more difficult. The hardest time I had with these kind of stages is in the Manta Marina Rainmaker one, where at the end it is pretty easy to die, as there is a lot of sprinklers and enemies that will spawn there, but I just find these to be filler as they just reuse stages and make you play a mode that most players likely have already played a ton of. Moving on, the stages with limited ink are some of the most interesting levels in the game. Throughout Splatoon, you are told to shoot around and cover the ground with as much ink as possible, so a restriction that forces you to be conservative with your ink is much more out of your comfort zone. Some of these will just have you get to the end with limited ink, while some will have you break an amount of targets with limited ink, making you have to make your shots or else you have to start again. One very unique idea was giving you a sniper with limited ink and then forcing you to maneuver 8 balls through rings. They do give you an extra ink tank to refill, but it still does make you think where each ball will go and if you have enough ink for it. The last kind of level I want to talk about is these box puzzle kind of levels. These can suck my dick. They are good ideas, and one of them is a cakewalk because every single box you have to destroy is just a different color. So you just go around destroying every box of a different color to finish the puzzle. But the other one fucking sucks. Matchmaker Station. This level, the amount of stress this level induces is unparalleled. It starts off fine, destroy the boxes that are obviously not the same, but as it goes on, it becomes harder to judge which box to destroy and which to keep. It makes it worse that when you destroy the wrong box, you don't instantly fail. There is like a 2 or 3 second delay before you fail if you destroy the wrong box. So what ends up happening is when you start doing the finer details, every single box you destroy is suspenseful. Sometimes I swore I broke the correct box, but I still die. Like, look at this. It isn't a bad level, I just hate how suspenseful it is. The end of the Octo expansion is one of the best moments in Splatoon. Now, after collecting the 4 things, the telephone tells you that you can now go to the Promised Land. Now, surprise, surprise, it tricked you, it puts you in a blender, and is trying to kill you. So, I mean, it wasn't really lying, I guess, just being very misleading. But Agent 3 comes to the rescue, and very cool detail that they ask you what you think Agent 3 looks like earlier in the game, around the midpoint. Whatever you choose will be what Agent 3 looks like when they come and save you. But back to the story, now you will need to escape the metro station and make it up to the mainland. This comes with an amazing segment of the game where you have to fight through 7 stages right after each other. The progression of moving through these stages is very natural and satisfying. You start out with nothing, no weapons, and you have to sneak your way across the stage because if you're caught, you have a high chance of dying as you have no way to fight back. Now this isn't like the Wind Waker in the Forbidden Fortress, where if you're caught, you instantly lose and get sent back. No, here they just shoot at you, and if you're good enough, you can dodge it and still get out alive. The tension the first few stages have is brilliant as it makes you think on your feet. Now, after reaching the first stage without dying, you reach the second phase, still without a weapon. This time you will see a ton of things that you would be able to interact with if you had a weapon, but you don't have one right now. So the objective is to find weapons and start going on the offensive. After a stage where you had no options other than running and hiding, this feels very satisfying to get back your weapons and start fighting back. I would also like to mention the music at this point. Now, all of Splatoon's music is really good. I love how they contextualize it by having different in-world bands that make the songs, along with the idols of each game that also make music. But the music was absent from the first phase of escaping Octo expansion. It gave a feeling of isolation, and it only added to the tension. So when you get to the second phase and hear this triumphant music, it is perfect timing for the stage that you get your weapons back in. Now you keep on going through phases with multiple challenges that are basically like putting regular levels one after another against you until you finally reach the elevator. Finally, you are able to achieve freedom, but just as you're about to get out, you have to fight Agent 3, who has been brainwashed. This is the most fun I have had in a boss fight in Splatoon. Agent 3 tests your skills and is also a fucking cheater. The last part of the fight has them doing splashdown after splashdown. They also have extra health, so you have to be on your toes. And then, after the fight, you have one more final boss fight against the telephone, who is now called Tartar. So basically, Tartar was created by a human scientist back when humans were still around. Apparently, it's the same scientist that made Judd, and he was made to protect the world or something. I don't fucking know. Ask a lore expert. But anyways, Tartar hates how squids are obsessed over trends and turf war and stuff like that. So what's the solution to this? Why, of course, the best course of action is to nuke the world and kill everything. So now you have to do a turf war match where you cover this human art looking motherfucker so that the world doesn't get destroyed. And this fight is so easy. How would anybody fail this? I bet I could do this blindfolded. We're gonna act like that didn't happen. So after you perfectly cover the statue in ink with no problems at all, you defeat Tartar and save the world, and best of all, you can now use the Octoling in the game. The Octo expansion 100% shows the potential of what Splatoon story modes can be. The challenge it brings to the table is something we have never really seen before in Splatoon. Every single level brings something new. I know people can get really mad when they see paid DLC for games, but in this case, I fully understand why it's DLC. It adds a substantial amount of content, along with more lore and a whole new character to bring into multiplayer. If Splatoon keeps on going with this style of single player, it would make it so it's less of a glorified tutorial and more of a genuine mode people can sink their teeth into. But this was only the single player. We have yet to discuss the bulk of what Splatoon is, so let's move on and talk about Salmon Run. Salmon Run was a new mode introduced in Splatoon 2, something to do when you're a little sick of multiplayer and want to play something a bit different. Salmon Run was made to be the zombie mode of Splatoon. Just like in zombies, you have to survive rounds of enemies going after you, but other than that, they have nothing in common. Salmon Run's objective is to not only survive the coming waves of salmon, but to also gather golden eggs. These golden eggs can only be obtained by defeating special salmon that are basically the specials in multiplayer. These salmon appear and annoy the shit out of you, and all have a special gimmick to get rid of them. They will drop eggs when you defeat them, and you will have to bring those back to the basket. The concept is pretty simple, but as the mode goes on, it gets more and more hectic. Now, I am sure if you were there at launch, you remember Salmon Run being closed for most of the time. For some reason, Nintendo thought it was an amazing idea to lock an entire mode away for, initially, days at a time. This meant that even if you were sick of multiplayer and wanted to switch it up, there was a great possibility that you wouldn't be able to play. So that means some people would rarely be able to play Salmon Run because some people have more busy lives and they may only be able to play for a few hours a day. So if they want to play Salmon Run, too bad. I remember a few days after Splatoon 2 came out, I had to go on a car trip, but Salmon Run was open while I was gone. So what was my solution? I used a hotspot so I could play Splatoon. It's a memory that to this day is extremely vivid. Now Salmon Run is only closed for 6 hours at a time now, but it is still pretty stupid it's a timed mode, and I am very happy Splatoon 3 will have it open 24/7. Salmon Run launched with 2 stages, the Spawning Grounds and the Marooner's Bay. Both maps are actually pretty good, and that goes for all the Salmon Run maps. All the maps are at least fun to play while still feeling unique. Well, all but one. Salmonoid Shipyard is a map that I just do not like at all. It is fine on low tide, but on high tide, just expect to lose. There's no mobility, and the only way to get to the other side of the map is these propeller platforms that move slow and are very easy to die on. What will happen is that your teammate will be on one of the platforms, and while you try jumping on, they shoot the propeller! Then you fall in the water and you have to be revived because the platform basically got ripped away from your feet. Other than that, the stages are fine though. Another annoying thing is that you cannot choose the weapons you use in Salmon Run. You'll be forced to use one of the weapons from the preset weapons they give you for the entire time Salmon Run is open. This means sometimes the weapons are really good and other times the weapons will get you killed. So this means if you get a charger, you lose. Personally, I like it when there is a rotation where it is entirely random weapons, as you have to think and adapt on the spot depending on what you get. Random weapons also mean you can get the Grizzco weapons. These are basically just OP versions of different weapons. Now, I don't have footage of this, so unfortunately you're gonna have to imagine it. These are just normal weapons on steroids, insane fire rate, damage, and hell, even the charger has instant charges. These weapons are insane and insanely fun to use. The only problem is that you only get to use them once in a blue moon if you're lucky. But let's talk about the boss salmon, each having a unique way to defeat them. The aim of the game is to balance taking out bosses and retrieving eggs. If you focus too much on getting the eggs, it is very easy to become overwhelmed by the bosses. This usually means a ton of people will die trying to retrieve eggs and making everyone else panic because we are now one down. Now, some of the bosses are more annoying than the others. Moz is one of the easiest salmons to deal with as they just approach you and attempt to eat you whole. The strategy to take them down is very simple. Just throw a bomb. After that, they will instantly die and you get your golden eggs. This is also one of the easiest ways to get golden eggs in your basket, as you can lead a Moz to the basket, kill it, and easily put the eggs in the basket. On the other side of the spectrum, we have the flyfish. The flyfish is basically the Tentamissiles boss, and that's very fitting as they are the most annoying special in multiplayer, and this is the most annoying salmon. The only way to get rid of a flyfish is to throw 2 bombs at it, 1 per container. This means most of the time it will take 2 cycles to kill a flyfish. And so, they will launch multiple missiles. Now you can kill it before it sends more missiles, but you'll have to instantly get back into the ink and throw another bomb. The only other way to kill it is to waste a stingray use just to get rid of it, which I do not see any reason to do. This is another annoying salmon, but at least it's more manageable, the Drizzler. The Drizzler is covered by a metal shell, so you can only damage it when it starts to shoot. The Drizzler is another pretty annoying boss as it shoots out the Inkstorm special. It doesn't do much damage, but many will dismiss it only to slowly die from it. Defeating the Drizzler is something that, even in professional, I have seen a ton of players mess up. First and foremost is to try and shoot back the Inkstorm before it starts. Even if it doesn't go fully back and take out the Drizzler, it will at least keep the danger away. Even if you don't kill a Drizzler, it is just useful to shoot back the Inkstorm, and it is one less thing to worry about. Now, the rest of the bosses are way more manageable in comparison to those two. The Steelheads pose not much of a threat at all. They will throw a bomb from their forehead, you can shoot it before they throw it, and it will explode and kill them. Most of the time, it is best to leave the one-shot weapons like chargers and blasters to deal with steelheads, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't shoot at it. These type of bosses are meant to be more of a distraction than being something that will kill you. The bomb is easy to avoid, but it is more dangerous as you try to kill it, as while you are shooting at it, other salmon may rush you and corner you. The steel eels are one of the easiest to deal with as they will only target one person and follow them. If you are playing with experienced players, most will know that if they're targeted, they need to run away so the teammates can start shooting it. Now sometimes you may think, you know what, I can take it on my own. And you would be wrong. Now it is possible to kill it by yourself, but if it has targeted you, it's going to be hard. If you have been targeted and you try to get behind it, it will spiral around, where, most of the time, the ink from the eel will start protecting the conductor. This essentially makes it impossible to kill it until it straightens out. So yeah, most of the time, try not to be a hero and just lead it away. Next up, scrappers. Scrappers are kind of like the steel eel and steelheads in a way that they target one person, but they're mostly used as a distraction. They will target one person and basically just be a shield. You won't be able to harm them until you shoot them enough to break them down. After this, it is very simple to just go around and kill them. This is one of the easiest boss salmon to deal with, as you just have to shoot it a bunch. If you have decent teamwork, your teammates will just go behind it while you're distracting it and they will take it out. This is another salmon that is easy to get eggs from, as you can just lead it to the basket while other players take it out. Finally, we have the stingers, another boss in the annoying category. Stingers are like the stingray, but they always stay near shore so that you'll have to go out of your way to take them out. This is also necessary because the stingrays are very deadly, and if you leave them alone, you will get wiped out. This means that at least one person will need to go to shore and knock them out before they can kill everyone. If I were to describe Salmon Run in one word, it would be chaos. Sure, when you just start out, it's a fun little mode, but as you play more, the more insane the game gets. You can go from a stroll in the park, only having maybe 2 or 3 bosses alive at a time, but then you get to professional, and you have 50 things to pay attention to. But if you pay too much attention to one thing, you're dead. The name of the game is movement. If you stay still, you likely won't last long. This is why weapons like chargers and splatlings do so bad in Salmon Run, as you have to stay still and charge them up. The splatlings at least have a high fire rate, so you can do some crowd control, but the chargers are forced to sit back in the safe locations and snipe. This means they won't get any eggs in the basket for the round, and so get less rewards even when they may have done more work. Brushes are another weapon that I have found to do pretty poorly in Salmon Run. You would think brushes would do pretty well in the mode, but nope. They have too low of range and really bad damage, making brush players struggle to take down even a normal large salmon. This is the reason why you may have done amazing some days in Salmon Run, while other days you couldn't even make it to round 3. The weapon balancing needs a bit of work, as it is very possible to have most, if not all, weapons be bad in a Salmon Run rotation. Hopefully in Splatoon 3 there will be better weapon balancing when it comes to Salmon Run, as it seems that the weapon choices in 2 are just randomly picked, no matter how badly they play together. Now there's a possibility a special event will occur when a round starts in Salmon Run. Most of the time, this switches your main objective from killing bosses to doing something different. There is the Mothership event, where there will be this huge UFO that will deploy flying salmon carrying packages. If you destroy them before they get to the ground, you will get 1 golden egg. If they reach the ground, the containers will deploy more salmon, making it harder to focus on the eggs. Obviously, the strategy here is destroy all the containers before they hit the ground, but that is easier said than done. There are so many sent out at the same time that it is basically impossible to get rid of them all. So try to get as many down at the beginning and try to do some crowd control by getting rid of them before they spawn too many salmon. Now the mothership may try to attack the basket and steal eggs. This is nothing to worry about. Everybody will know what is happening and will instantly change targets to the mothership. You may lose a few eggs, but again, it's nothing really to worry about. The mothership is one of the easier ones, but I found it is way rarer than the other events too. Next up is the Salmon Rush, which is an event where one person will be targeted by a big school of salmon, and among them are gold salmon that will drop eggs. This mode is very easy to get overwhelmed with, especially if weapons are bad in the rotation, but I will give you a huge secret tip. Just go up the wall when you're getting targeted. If you have decent teammates, they will be able to take care of the salmon while you stay safe. Also, if someone doesn't know this and you do it while you're getting targeted, they will most likely catch on. This trick makes the event a bit of a joke, but it is still very possible to be wiped out on it if you're on a bad spot, as some maps just have worse spots than others. By the way, if your teammates suck, going up the wall won't protect you. The salmon are actually able to jump and just kill you if they aren't taken care of fast enough, so hope you get good teammates. Fog is a much more passive event, just making it harder to see. Fog can be very easily underestimated, as it is very easy to get overwhelmed just because they can surround you before you even see them coming. There isn't much to give when it comes to advice for this event. Just pay attention to where the salmon seem to be coming from and make some quick decisions on whether to go out and kill that stinger or to stay with the team. Goldie Seeking is another one of the easy but fun events. There are many valves across the map, and in one of them, a gold salmon is hiding. The idea is to go around shooting valves to find which one has the golden salmon in it. This is easy because of how easy it is to find the golden salmon. Just shoot one valve to test. If ink shoots low, you're far away. If it shoots high, you're close. So if you shoot one and it goes really high, you know that the correct one is somewhere near you. This is basically a free round, as the only way salmon will spawn is if you shoot a valve, and even then, not many will spawn. There is no threat of getting eliminated in this mode. Honestly, the only way to lose is if you purposefully try to fail. Cohawk Charge is an event for low tide where many large salmon will spawn and rush you. They give you some ink cannons to deal with them, but this is still a decently challenging event. There will be 2 cannons that will spawn, so you have to decide who will use the cannons and who won't. The chargers and splatlings should always try to get the cannon, as they are backlined weapons anyways. One common mistake I see during this event is the cannon players thinking they are invincible. In the cannon, you are still vulnerable to bosses, so if you're targeted by missiles, Stingray, Inkstorm, or even a Moz, you may die. Cannon players need to manage their ink while avoiding getting splatted. If your cannon player dies, you most likely will get wiped out. The cannons are needed for crowd control and killing bosses like steelheads, so if they get wiped, you're gonna have a very bad time. If you are in the front lines, good luck. You need to put all your trust into the cannon players and try to protect them as well. Flyfish and drizzlers are your job to get rid of, as they pose the most threat to cannons. You will also need to be constantly bringing eggs. Finally, the grillers. Grillers will target one person and follow them. There will be a tail on the back of them that you must shoot until they enter the stun lock where you can kill it. Grillers sounds easy enough, but when it starts, it is a struggle. If you are targeted, you need to lead it away so your team can stun it. But you will need to have trust in your team to be able to get rid of them, or else you'll be stuck running away. Now on top of that, there will be a ton of small salmon that will try to attack you while you are taking care of the grillers. They are easy enough to kill, but the problem is the amount they send at you. You will quickly find yourself surrounded by them and most likely die. Grillers is the most annoying of the events, but I still find myself enjoying it, even if I get wiped out many times I get it. Salmon Run was an amazing addition to Splatoon 2. The feeling of getting through a close game of Salmon Run, or a game where you turned in a buttload of eggs and got a huge payout, is one that is unmatched. Salmon Run has the element of replayability that makes me just want to go one more round. The chaos of Salmon Run is something that gives you a feeling of satisfaction when you manage to beat the madness, especially when playing in professional. It is a very worthy addition that brings more variety to the available modes to play in Splatoon. That being said, I think it needed just a bit more fleshing out. Some weapons are a guaranteed loss. There could be a few more special events and a few more modes and bosses. This is why Salmon Run Next Wave is very exciting to me. Even though it seems there will only be 3 maps at launch, the extra wave, extra bosses, and Big Run event have me giddy. Salmon Run has the potential to be even better in the future, and the Big Run event seems like something that could give Salmon Run even more content. Now onto the meat and potatoes of Splatoon, the multiplayer. Multiplayer has always been front and foremost when playing Splatoon. It is the main mode to play and has every other mode and mechanic revolve around it. Even the story mode and Salmon Run are complementary to the multiplayer, as they give you rewards and experience that you can bring into it. Now there is a lot to unpack with the multiplayer, so I will just try to cover as much as I can, so let's get started. Now the gameplay of Splatoon is rudimentary while still being very unique. When you break it down, it's still shooting and getting rid of enemies, but what surrounds it is what makes Splatoon stand out. Splatoon is a very fast-paced shooter compared to other shooters. The maps are smaller and you have less teammates than other shooters, but the gameplay is faster. Being able to move around in ink adds to the mobility of the gameplay as well as the very quick kill times. I mean, the basic splatter shot kills in 3 shots. So you have to move around and avoid getting hit rather than just being a better shot. Now Splatoon has many different weapon classes that all have their own advantages and disadvantages. Even though some weapons are clearly not as good as others, there is no weapon that's completely useless like there is in some games. At launch they would add 1 weapon every week for a year, letting you try out something new and give you a reason to come back for at least once a week. Sometimes these would just be new kits for existing weapons, but sometimes they were brand new weapons entirely. Some weapons are considered to be outclassed now, as the community has found which weapons are good and which ones suck. But even if a weapon is considered the worst in the game, it can still be used and people can still do very well with it. And on the talk of weapons, how about we go through each and every one of them? Each different type of weapon, mind you, not every single variant. First we have the shooters, the main weapon class in the game and also the one that is the most meta. Shooters are pretty basic, they shoot. Some shoot farther like the Jet Squelcher, while others may have a very short range but a great amount of ink coverage. The shooters are the weapons that you will try out first and most likely use for most of the game. The Splatoon 2 meta has basically revolved around shooters as they have a great range and a good time to kill. Now this is mostly going for the splatter shots and the gals, but the Splooshomatic kinda sucks. Its range is lower than a sneeze and you can't even aim with it. You basically have to get right up into somebody's face and hope your shots hit. This is why it is considered one of the worst weapons in the game. The Aerospray has the same kind of problem, just not nearly as bad. The blasters are apparently considered shooters, but I'm gonna give them their own section. Blasters excel at chip damage and one-shots. The most basic blasters, like the Luna, Range, and Basic Blaster, have one-shot kills if you hit a direct. The difference is the fire rate, range, and power of each blaster. I found that the Luna blaster was just a bit too short of range to use over any other blaster like the Rapid Blaster or the Range Blaster. The Range Blaster is the most effective when someone becomes a god and starts hitting directs left, right, and center. The thing is, nobody does that. Most of the time, a blaster will kill you by the indirects rather than directs. While a direct is extremely satisfying to hit, it can be a little inconsistent. When jumping, your accuracy plummets down to a point where hitting directs in the air is like spinning a roulette. The Clash Blaster kinda sucks. It fires fast and short and it takes 2 directs to kill. For some reason though, every time I go up against a Clash Blaster, they're cracked. Am I missing something here or am I just like really bad? Like there must be some kind of trick. Tell me, please. I just want to be good. I just want to be good with the Clash Blaster. Next up, the I Want to Be Different class. This is basically just the Nozzle Noses and the Squeezer. These are both weapons I have very little experience with, so I would just say that you need to get a rhythm with the Nozzle Noses, as you can't just consistently shoot, and that the Squeezer requires you to have a very steady hand as the single shots go pretty far and do decent damage. For the Squeezer, the full auto option should be left more as a panic button and as an option to finish somebody off rather than the main mode of firing. Rollers are the typical shotgun kind of weapon, being very close range but very powerful. Most of the rollers play the same, but the most unique ones are the Flingza roller and the Dynamo roller. The Flingza lets you fling ink way farther and be more powerful, while the Dynamo roller is a souped up beefy boy that takes a long time to swing but does a lot of damage.
Pop it a little more. No, that's a lot of damage!
The rollers have never been the best weapons in the game, but they are still fun to use and can be at least viable if you're good enough. The brushes are like the rollers, just not shit. The brushes are extremely fast, and while they don't have the best ink coverage, they make up for it in power. If you are a great button masher, then brushes are right up your alley. Just get right next to someone and spam the ZR button as they get blinded by your ink. The brushes are great at going around and ruining others' days. They are easy to get around with, and you can just sneak up on people and slap them with ink. Also, I have no idea what the difference is between the ink brush and the Octobrush. I think the Octobrush has more range, but that's it. Chargers. They are the snipers of the game and are also the weapons that take the most time to master. Instead of just shooting ink everywhere, you have to actually pick your shots. You can also store your charge so that you can still move around and keep that charge. Every charger behaves about the same, just with different ranges, with the exceptions being the scopes and the Bamboozler. The scopes are just normal chargers and popping an ACOG on top of it. It gives them a little bit more range, along with being able to aim in first person. The Bamboozler is a weak variant that takes 2 shots to kill, unless you have main power up. The Charger class is one that I have a lot of fun playing. It is so fulfilling to snipe multiple people in a row or hit a trick shot. These weapons are simply satisfying. The Sloshers, weapons that are buckets that chuck ink. Each slosher is actually pretty unique. There's the basic one that just throws ink, the sloshing machine that throws a ball of ink, the Explosher that is a long-range slosher that annoys the shit out of me, and the universal most hated weapon of all time, the Blow Blobber. This fucking weapon, man. It will throw bubbles that will just bounce around, and this means you can just spam shoot and just hope it hits. It is very annoying, and I wish it was nerfed. Splatlings are a more usable anchor class. You can charge it up and then shoot ink at a very high rate until your charge is gone. All Splatlings work the same with different charge times and inking times. The Mini Splatling has a very short charge and very short shooting time. I hate this weapon. I always find myself killing nothing when I'm trying to use it, and I would rather just use a different Splatling, like the Ballpoint, which has a normal fire rate at the beginning, but then will be slower with a more focused spread and more longer range. There's the Nautilus, which can store charges just like the Chargers, and the Hydras, which have a longer charge time but a much longer shooting time. Unfortunately, Splatlings aren't that heavily used in higher ranks, as it is simply outclassed by other weapons. Even so, I have a soft spot for Splatlings. Dualies, the flagship new weapon for Splatoon 2. The dualies are just shooters, but you get 2 of them. Now this may sound cool, but most of the time this means their accuracy has been slashed. Now you can dodge roll with the dualies. This is mostly used as an evasive measure, and it is very annoying sometimes when people in multiplayer just spam the dodge. The thing is, it is the best way to increase accuracy with the dualies because it will combine the 2 cursors into one and increase your accuracy. As for the types of dualies, you'll have the standard dualies, the dapple dualies, which dodge faster and shoot faster but have low range, the gluga dualies, which are high-powered variants that give you more range and damage, the dualie squelchers that just give you more range, which is kinda useless when the glugas already exist, and the tetra dualies that let you roll a whopping 4 times, allowing for 2 times the disconnects than usual. The dualies are cool, yet not that effective. Most of the time, it would be better to just use a shooter over the dualies just because the accuracy is much better. Finally, the brellas. These are pretty unique as it basically gives you a shield. The standard Brella is a balancing act between whether or not to use the shield. This makes the Brellas hard counters to shooters, as they can have shooters waste their ink on the shield only to kill them after. The Tentabrella has a huge shield that you can also send out. This allows for a moving shield that you can also shoot through and follow. The Undercover Brella allows you to shoot while the shield is up, which is pretty cool, but the shield breaks a bit too fast. Brellas are a great weapon class that I just have no idea how to use. I would love to be good with them, but my smooth brain just can't do well with them. Now, even with all these weapons, they're only a piece of the full puzzle that is your loadout, because now it's time to talk about gear. Gear is essential to your loadout as they give you special abilities that will help you in battles. This can be anything from faster run speed, to saving ink used by your main weapon, to the most broken ability that turns the Bamboozler into a one-shot. Gear is essential and pretty complicated if you want to fully dive into it, so let's try to cover everything. First off, you buy gear from shops around town. As your level goes up, so will the amount of gear that will be in rotation in the shop. You can't just buy any gear you want, you have to check each shop each day to see what they have, so it will take a long time to get the gear you want. Now after that, the gear will have a main ability on it. There can also be unique abilities you can only get from certain brands, along with each brand giving you a better chance to roll a certain sub-ability. Oh, you can also unlock sub-abilities by leveling up your gear in battle. Once it levels up, there will be a random sub-ability assigned to your gear. How many subs you can have on one piece of gear depends on the gear's ranking. 1 star is 1 sub, 3 stars is 3 subs. Now the point of this is to try to build a gear set that fits your playstyle, but you 100% will not get the sub-abilities you want. So what do? Well, now you have to get ability chunks, which allow you to swap out subs for a different ability. Now how do you get ability chunks? Well, there are 2 basic ways. One is to get them as rewards from Salmon Run. Blue capsules will have these ability chunks, but you do not know which kind. Now the other way is to scrub gear that have the subs you want for chunks. You can do this at merch, who can also add slots onto gear that has less than 3, reroll abilities for gear, use ability chunks to replace subs on gear, and order gear from other players. Now if you already have 1 sub of a certain ability on the gear, then it will take more chunks to add another sub onto that same gear. This also doesn't make sense, as many times having a full set of subs for gear is actually worse than diversifying a bit. And on top of that, you can also get drink tickets that increase the gear XP that you earn, while also giving you a higher chance to earn a certain sub ability when you level up with that piece of gear. But you can also just use a drink, and it's very possible you not get the sub you wanted and you'll have to scrub the gear again. So yeah, the gear system has a lot to sink your teeth into, but a lot of this is min-maxing your gear to have the best possible setups. While it is important to have good gear, as it will definitely help, the perfecting of gear is something that I never really got too obsessed over. I am happy with the main gear set I have, as I have Last Ditch Effort, Sub Saver, and main power up. This setup is good for me in my ranked setup. Actually, I think Last Ditch Effort is a must if you want to play ranked. In Turf War, it only takes effect in the last 30 seconds and gives you Ink Saver main, Ink Saver sub, and Ink Recovery. But in ranked, this will start to take effect when the enemy is at 50 or below, and the effect will gradually get stronger as they are closer to winning. This provides an amazing comeback to the team and has helped me come back from more near losses than I can count. Then there is Main Power Up. Now, Main Power Up was added pretty late into the game in version 4.3.0 that came out in December of 2018. Main Power Up broke the balance of Splatoon. Now, Main Power Up has a variety of effects that depends on which weapon you're using. Even some weapons in the same class don't get the same effects. The most common effects were increased ink coverage and increased damage. This makes some weapons broken. The Bamboozler became the best charger in the game because its ability to one-shot anything that has taken even the smallest of damage. Walked into enemy ink for half a second, one-shotted by the Bamboozler. Got shot once by ink 1 minute ago, one-shotted by the Bamboozler. This ability was so broken and they did nothing to really fix it. They kind of just said fuck it and left it untouched. But other than that, the abilities were decently balanced throughout Splatoon 2. Now, you can't have a multiplayer shooter without stages, so let's look at the stages we got. Now, we got 8 stages on launch, which isn't bad compared to the 5 we got at launch for Splatoon 1, but we could have gotten a bit more, I feel. Now, the one thing about Splatoon 2 maps is that I just don't find them to be as memorable or fun to play on as Splatoon 1's were. Now, that doesn't mean I hate them, but I have found myself having a hard time picking these maps apart and attempting to find which ones are my favorites and which ones I hate. So let's do a mini Splatoon 2 ranking. Humpback Pump Track, it's okay. New Albacore Hotel, it's okay. Wahoo World, go lay down. Camp Triggerfish, it's meh. Inkblot Art Academy, it's okay. Sturgeon Shipyard, it's okay. Starfish Main Stage, I actually have a soft spot for this one. Anchovy Games, it's okay. Moray Towers, not much of a fan. Piranha Pit, this stage can suck it. Mako Mart, it's okay. Snapper Canal, it's okay. Gobi Arena, it's okay. The Reef, it's okay. Kelp Dome, it's okay. Skipper Pavilion, it's okay. Manta Marina, it's okay. Arowana Mall, it's okay. Schellendorf Institute, it's okay. Port Mackerel, not fun. Walleye Warehouse, why did they bring this back? Blackberry Skate Park, it's okay. And Muscle Forge Fitness, it's okay. So that is the definitive Splatoon 2 stage ranking, and if anyone disagrees, they are legally wrong. But seriously, you notice a pattern? Well, if you didn't, then I hope to God you're not paying attention, because you can see it's pretty obvious I'm pretty indifferent to these stages. Now, I wouldn't say these stages are entirely bad, more that the stages all feel the same. They are all mid... They're all mid... They are all small mid-fights with little alternatives in a cramped map. Now, there are stages that are a little different, but I feel this is for the majority of maps. None of the designs of them make me think, wow, like a lot of the Splatoon 1 maps did. And speaking of Splatoon 1, they somehow chose the worst maps to bring back from 1. Now, some Splatoon 1 maps are decent choices, like Arowana Mall or Kelp Dome. But then they decide to bring back Piranha Pit? Like, who was asking for Piranha Pit back? I know that Moray Towers is basically the flagship map for Splatoon now that Smash Bros. Ultimate used it as the Splatoon stage, but I have never really been a fan of this one. I'll give it credit, it is unique, and I would say it deserves to come back, but I just don't like this map. The multiple layers are cool, but if you try to stick in the middle, you will get sniped from somewhere on the enemy's tower. This makes mid not a place to fight over, more as a space used to get to the other team's base. Instead of fighting for mid, it is just a rush to see who can get into the other's base the fastest. Hell, they even added this ink rail in Splatoon 2 that leads right to the sniper's base, but I still think it does deserve to be in the game. I may be complaining like this just because I've spent so much time with these maps and it's just time for new ones, but I still think that these maps are all kind of samey. There are not many bad maps, but they all fall into a formula I'm just sick of. The specials in Splatoon 2 are also pretty interesting. Coming off the back of Splatoon 1's completely broken specials, I'm sure they wanted to make the specials more of a support move instead of a power play. Splatoon 2's specials are more of an extra boost that may help you win the game, but they are not nearly as OP as the specials in Splatoon 1. Tenta Missiles is a special meant for moving people. The more you target, the less each individual target will get attacked, but that doesn't matter too much. It is made to move that annoying sniper sitting in the middle. This is also another reason I don't like some of these stages, as you will have to use a special to move people or else you'll be stuck for the rest of the game. If you are in the community, you know how hated missiles are.
Familiar special weapons like the Tetra missiles. Eject. Special weapons like the Tetra missiles. Eject.
They are extremely meta as it is fast to charge, takes no effort, and lets you quickly just use and forget. The problem with missiles is that they are way too easy to spam, while being a really good option to force someone to move. This is a great special for all modes except for probably Clam Blitz. You can ink the zone, target the Rainmaker, and stop the tower push just by targeting them. Now, while writing, it has been found that Tenta missiles have been nerfed in Splatoon 3. The missiles will no longer track people and will only launch to their initial position. I am very glad with this change, as it doesn't change the purpose of missiles being used to move anchors, while not making it annoying as shit. Okay, moving on, we've got the Stingray. Stingray is another special that forces people to move. This time, you have to aim the ray and it will do chip damage to anybody that's getting hit by it. It is basically what evolved out of the Killer Whale from Splatoon 1. There, the Killer Whale was basically an insta-kill. Here, you actually have to have a bit of skill to use the Stingray properly, something I do not have. Just like missiles, it's a great special for Rainmaker and tower control because when someone is pushing objective, just pop the special and take them out. Inkjet. Inkjet is one of the more balanced specials. It is basically a jetpack with a grenade launcher attached to it. Now, while using it, you will be very vulnerable, so what I have found to work the best is to go into squid form after shooting, making it harder to hit you. Inkjet is okay on its own, but really shines when you combo it with Ink Armor. Speaking of which, Ink Armor. Ink Armor gives everyone on your team a barrier that can take 30 damage or at least one shot. This means you can challenge a charger with it on and possibly take turf back or stay on objective just long enough to win. Splashdown. Despite being okay at lower ranks, it is now the laughingstock of Splatoon 2. Splashdown is way too predictable. Its height will be the exact same every single time, and you are still vulnerable for most of it. This means once you get to higher ranks, Splashdown becomes useless and more of a death button rather than a special. Inkstorm is, surprise surprise, another special that makes people move. Inkstorm is a way more balanced version of this kind of special, but it is also pretty boring. You just throw something and some ink rain falls and will do a bit of damage to any enemy in the storm. Inkstorm is most effective when pushing another team, because while they were fighting you, they most likely will forget about the storm because it doesn't do much damage. Baller is another offensive special that I think is one of the better specials. You can easily get shut down if you're not careful, but it can also give you a decent advantage. The explosion range is decent, but you can also have the ball destroyed. Bubble Blower is another force people to move special. Yeah, just take what I have said about the other specials of this type and apply it to this. There's a bit of difference, but it's really just choose whichever you want. Booyah Bomb. New special, same story. Okay, Booyah Bomb is actually pretty different, as it has a lot more killing power than other ones, but it is still fundamentally made to move players. Ultra Stamp is one of the best specials in the game, even if it isn't the most powerful. The Stamp is basically an insta-kill, but it is extremely hard to turn. Add that with being able to get killed easily from the sides and behind, and you have to actually think when you use this. But because this is balanced, it isn't very viable. Finally, we have the bomb launchers. They do what the name entails. You launch a shit ton of bombs. And they are the best defensive option for specials. So you see what I'm saying here? Most of the specials just force people to move and really aren't that fun to use. It seems like Nintendo saw that people were complaining how OP Splatoon's 1 specials were, and so they did a complete 180 and made them ineffective and boring. Now, what is a multiplayer game without modes? The meat of the dish, the main thing you sink your teeth into. Here we have 5 standard game modes with a variety of ways to play them. First is the basic Turf War, the one that everyone knows and loves. Quite simple, shoot as much ink as you can and cover the map. That's the objective. It's a very simple yet addictive mode. The nature of it inherently brings out a more laid back game mode than others because you are not being told to go out and kill everyone else you see, nor are you forced to fight over one object or race to the finish. You can just go around the map spraying ink on whatever isn't already covered. Nobody will ever get mad at a Turf War match because at the end of the day, it's Turf War. You lose nothing if you lose, and if you win, you get more experience, which at the end of the day most players don't care about once they hit a high enough level to unlock everything. On the topic of leveling, it's basically just a flex bar for how much you've played the game. All it is a bar that goes up at the speed of an obese snail while giving you nothing. You can also get prestige in the game, which gives you a little star in your profile and nothing else. It doesn't matter, and it's basically a dick measuring competition. Speaking of dick measuring, oh look, here's ranked mode. You can play ranked once you hit level 10, and this lets you play some more competitive modes that are more fun than Turf War. Now, at launch, Splatoon 2 had 3 ranked modes. They later added one more as post-launch DLC, but we will get to that. The whole point of Ranked is to play against players of the same skill as you try to climb the ranks. You start off at C- and you can get all the way to S+, where from there you can just rank up in S+ again for no benefit other than a higher number. It is a great ranked system if only there wasn't one problem. You have a different rank for each individual mode. This means that even if you are the highest rank in one mode, it doesn't matter in another mode. So sometimes you could be in a way lower rank in a certain mode because it's stupid, dumb, and you don't want to play it, only to stomp on the players in that mode when you do decide to play it. Thankfully, you can skip ranks if you do very well in matches, letting you get to the rank you should be at faster. But I see no reason why we couldn't just have a single rank that goes up regardless of which mode you played. Especially because that's how it worked in Splatoon 1. And obviously people didn't like this because they are going back to that in Splatoon 3 as well. This means Splatoon 2 will be known as the weird kid in the Splatoon series that forced you to rank up each and every mode. But I guess we should look at each mode, so let's start with Splat Zones. Splat Zones is simple. Keep the zone for a certain amount of time. It is a King of the Hill mode where one team will need to dominate the middle to win. The more time you had in the zone though does mean you will get a bigger penalty for losing it. The penalty is extra time that you'll have to shave off before you can get back to getting rid of the main time. Now Splat Zones is the easiest to understand for ranked mode and has the least amount of strategies. This makes it the easiest to carry as a solo player because the only strategy is to kill the other team before they can ink the zone. So if you are good enough, you can just go around killing everyone before they get to the zone or while they try to take the zone. Most of the time, the specials that can target and ink a large amount of space have a great amount of usability here. Specials like the Booyah Bomb, Ink Storm, or Tenta Missiles are used a lot because they can move people off zone or ink zone to take back control. Zones is the most simple of the 4 modes, but it is also one of my favorites. It's fun to go around trying to get as many kills as you can, and the feeling of one push knockout is euphoric. Speaking of one push knockouts, Rainmaker. Rainmaker is notorious for how easy it is for the game to end quickly in lower ranks. While it isn't really a problem in higher ranks, this is still very funny. Rainmaker has 2 teams fight for control of the Rainmaker, a special weapon that you have to take to the enemy's base. Rainmaker is a game mode that demands teamwork from every player involved with the team, and because of this, it can be a bit frustrating. Solo carrying is not very easy in Rainmaker, as at least one person will have to carry the Rainmaker. This does mean you have a great backup weapon to push, but the Rainmaker makes you extremely slow. Inking with the Rainmaker is also pretty hard, so you have to rely on your teammates to not only clear the enemies, but also ink a path for you. The problem with this is that 1, there's no communication options for your team other than Booyah in this way, and 2, teammates are fucking stupid. There have been many times in Rainmaker where teammates will do nothing when you just cleared out every enemy, or even if 2 or 3 people are dead, the charger will refuse to take the Rainmaker. Like, really, what is a charger going to do when rushing the enemy base with everyone? They have to stay back and try to pick people off, but the whole point of the support team is to go ahead and clear the way. This means you have to pick up the Rainmaker half the time, even if you're using a splatter shot, and you'll still end up killed. Rainmaker is a mode that requires communication in a game that has none. I still enjoy playing the mode, and I don't hate it, but I definitely lose more in this mode to things out of my control than I would like. Speaking of out of my control, Clam Blitz. Clam Blitz is a mode that requires you to collect 10 clams to make a super clam where then you can throw it into the enemy base and break their barrier so you can throw more clams in. Even the premise of this mode is a lot more complicated than just go to zone and protect it. This makes clams a very interesting mode that has a lot of potential for some amazing strategies. And then you realize this is Splatoon. See, Clam Blitz was released in a post-launch update and everybody fucking hated it. See, the problem wasn't that the mode was bad per se, It was just that the mode required a great amount of teamwork and coordination, where the only ways to communicate is with these and squid bagging. Many times you will try to set up a great clan blitz play by having 9 clams and be in the enemy's base undetected, or even have no clams but you're there to be a super jump spot for anybody that gets a super clam. But no matter how much you hammer the "this way" button, some people don't notice or care. There's no way to tell your teammates what you want to do, so it just ends up being a game mode where someone gets a super clam, you try and push, and you either succeed or you don't. And then, when the other team has a super clam, you stay at the base and try to kill them. The public ranked matches for these just make the mode way more simple, boring, and frustrating than what Nintendo probably envisioned. Let's end it off on a more positive note. Tower control. Here you have to stay on the tower and take it to the other team's base. Throughout the track there will be a few checkpoints you have to get past before making it to the base. These checkpoints have to be fully cleared before moving on or leaving the tower, as you will have to go through the whole checkpoint again if you fail to clear it. The more people on tower, the faster it will clear checkpoints. Tower control is another one of the good Splatoon ranked modes. It still requires teamwork, but it is much easier to understand what you should be doing to help your team. The anchor or a support should get on the tower while everyone else fends off the enemy players that will try to kill the person on the tower. The mode is also more balanced than in Splatoon 1, where there were no checkpoints leading to instant KOs. Tower control is one of my favorites, and it's also the one I have the highest rank in. Now, as you can see, the ranked modes are a mixed bag, some being very fun while others being very frustrating. In fact, I am pretty sure my blood pressure has hit unhealthy levels while playing ranked. Ranked must have taken at least 3 years off of my life, and I'll do it again in Splatoon 3. Now, I only bothered to get to S+ in each mode before I stopped caring, but there's actually one more rank, X rank. Only possible by getting to S+9, X rank is a special rank that all the elite, pro, god, sweaty tryhard players go. It's where you see the most insane plays and the most insane people.
Fucking bubbles! Are you kidding me? You fucking dick!
Now, most people don't know this, but X rank is actually another paid DLC. Now, you may be thinking, but wait, you don't have to pay for X rank? That's where you're wrong. You see, X rank is paid DLC because of how much money you'll have to spend on therapy to get and maintain this rank. Getting to S+ already had me on the brink of mental insanity, so I cannot even begin to imagine what it's like to get to X rank. Now, I don't have much to actually say about X rank, as I never cared to get to it myself, but at the end of the day, it's just the pro rank where you battle for a bigger number. Now, what if you wanted to play ranked modes and not pull your hair out? That's where League Battle comes in. League lets you play ranked modes in pairs or in a squad. You can play one mode with the maps in rotation until rotation is done and see how high you rank. Oh, I forgot about map rotation. Okay, so basically you can only play 2 maps at a time for 2 hours, and this also means ranked rotation, turf war rotation, and league rotation are all different. It's stupid, but we all kind of just accepted it, and now we're indifferent to it. Back to League. It's fun. I haven't really been able to play it that much, but from the few times I have played it, I've enjoyed myself. The only problem I have is that you have to team up, and that most of the time you will either play against a baby team that doesn't know what they're doing, or a pro gamer team that has 10,000 collective hours in the game. It's a fun mode to play with friends and to play ranked modes without caring about your rank, but I wish there was an option to solo queue. On to the last mode. Splatfests. Splatfests were limited time events that would happen about once every month or so. The idea was to pick one of 2 sides and fight for their team. These teams were always represented by Pearl and Marina, the new idols for the game. It's kind of surprising that we went this long without talking about Pearl and Marina actually. They are part of the idol group Off the Hook and are basically the faces of this game. Every time you boot up the game, they'll give you the news of what stages are in rotation and if Salmon Run is in rotation. This was not skippable, so every single time you wanted to boot up Splatoon, you have to mash A over and over again while they say the same jokes over and over again until you can finally play the game. Now, if you're already playing and the maps update, you don't have to watch the news. You'll just get a notification and you can get right back to playing. Unless Salmon Run opens. For some reason, they thought it was necessary to bring us back to the news if Salmon Run opens up in the next rotation. Why? Why couldn't they just put it along with the notification text? Just add a line that says Grisco is now hiring or something like that. Why bring us back to the news when everybody already complained of how much you had to watch it in Splatoon 1? Oh well, at least we don't have to watch it in Splatoon 3. Fuck. Okay, back on track. Splatfests. Now, I'm going to have to use Splatoon 3 premiere footage for this, as I don't have any Splatfest footage of Splatoon 2, so just imagine I'm talking about 2. Splatfests were always fun events that happened once a month, usually a war on meaningless topics like cats versus dogs, ice cream versus cake, mayo versus ketchup, that kind of thing. The point is to pick which one you like more and fight for it. You can only play Turf War during this time, which sucks for the people who want to play ranked during the Splatfest, but I never really cared. But as you play Turf Wars, each win counts towards your team. In the end, teams are awarded points depending on the amount of votes, wins in solo Turf War, and wins in team Turf War. Except this was changed later on to be votes, wins in open Turf War, and wins in pro Turf War. Plaza is changed into nighttime and you can see the idols perform with all the other Inklings hitting the gritty. The stages are also changed to nighttime, which makes the stages look absolutely stunning. After all of that, results will come in the day later, and whichever wins is apparently legally better than the other according to Splatfest law. So sorry spoon users, you have to use a fork for your cereal now. Why don't you cry into your container of pulp OJ and eat your fries with mayo? But at the end of the Splatfest, you get some super sea snails, depending on how well you did and if you won. These can be used to upgrade slots for merch and not much else. Splatfests were always a blast to play in, and it is very cool to see that these Splatfests also contribute to the next game, seeing how Chaos won the final Splatfest and now Splatoon 3 is centered around Chaos. It is very cool to see the in-game events directly influencing the development of the next game. And speaking of the next game, it's time to say goodbye and move on. Splatoon 2 means a lot to me. Even for the hour plus runtime of this video, there's still so much I haven't said. Even through all the flaws I may see, I still love this game. It is something that has given me some of the strongest friendships in my life, people I care deeply about, all through Splatoon 2. I know it may sound cliche to say, but I genuinely don't know where I would be if I'd never gotten to Splatoon. It was a series that has grown up with me. For both games, I still remember launch days vividly. Getting up early before school so I could play a few games of Splatoon 1. Begging my mom to take me to the mall so I could pick up my pre-order for Splatoon 2. Splatoon 2 in particular means a whole lot to me. Somehow, in a game with no voice chat, a game with no way to communicate with anybody, I found some of my lifelong friends. Now, I didn't want this conclusion to be all emotional and heartfelt, but I feel like this is the only way to send off Splatoon 2. With the new era of Splatoon upon us, it's crazy to think Splatoon 2 is half a decade old. Splatoon 2 was surely something unique, and it seems that the sales reflect that. Even when it may have had the worst specials, the worst maps, and the worst ranking system out of all the Splatoon games, it was a bloody great time. The community of Splatoon is one that I rarely ever see toxicity from. That is something to be proud of, as from what I have seen, most of the online competitive games like this end up having very toxic communities. It is no stretch to say Splatoon 2 has changed my life. Thank you to everyone I have met over the years, and for Splatoon 2, goodbye, and thank you. See you all in Splatoon 3. Thank you for watching this video. This was a very large task for me to do. Even though I have done that Mario Kart video before, I don't think I knew quite what I was getting myself into when I started doing this project, but I feel good about finishing it. There's obviously some things that I'm just not skilled enough to do, but hopefully if you enjoyed this, just leave a like, and then if you want to see more of this, stick around, because I feel like this is where my stride is as making content goes. So yeah, if you like this kind of stuff, subscribe. You'll be able to see me at least grow a bit, as I'm sure I will go higher and higher in quality. But thank you for watching. I very much appreciate anybody that has made it to the end here and watched all of it. So thank you to you. And I also stream on Twitch. There will be a link in description if you want to go follow me there. I chill, talk to me, and I will probably be streaming Splatoon 3 a lot, so look forward to that, and have a good day, and take care of yourself.